Okay, so the main news event these days is the situation in the Ukraine, which I've been trying to make updates on. But if you've been watching the news, you'll know that the Oscar Pistorius trial is also quite a big item these days. The first thing this sort of makes me think of is the O.J. Simpson thing in the United States in the 1990s, in terms of the sensationalism around it. What you have here is a young man who was basically a national hero in his country. He's an icon of the Paralympics, and I believe the victim, Riva Steenkamp, was a model. So what you have is two famous young people. One of them has been killed in tragic circumstances, and the other is accused of her murder. But murder there is a key word, because Oscar Pistorius' defence team are arguing it's manslaughter, and their defence, it's my understanding, is based on the idea that he thought she was an intruder and he fired a shot at her. There's a few angles I want to take with this. Firstly, I think whatever the outcome is and whatever actually happened, there could be no doubt that a young woman has lost her life, and that's tragic. In terms of whether Oscar Pistorius is guilty or innocent, I really don't know, and none of us can know for certain. In terms of guilty, what I'm talking about is not guilty of killing her. He done that. We know he done that. He shot her. But that's manslaughter if it was unintentional, i.e. if he thought she was an intruder. When I say guilty, I'm talking about whether or not it was malicious. Therein lies the sort of issue behind this case. There seems to be a discrepancy in what the witness is saying so far, based on what I've seen, i.e. because the victim had severe brain trauma, so it would be physically impossible for her to scream out if she was in that situation, whereas the witness claims that she heard someone screaming. But the intention of this video was not to detail the crime case sort of detail by detail. I'm not following the trial inside out, so I'm not in a position to say that. Rather, it's about the nature of this trial. Firstly, I will say one thing. If it is what he says and he shot her thinking she was an intruder, I could think a few things worse than losing a loved one, and then being tried for her murder. I can think of a few things more nightmarish than that, because it's like you're being punished twice. Firstly, you've lost someone you love, and then you're being vilified and punished for her death. I can't think of a few things worse than that. I'm not saying that's what's happened, but Oscar Pistorius did break down yesterday, and that it was very hard to see that as a malicious person. But like I said, we just don't know. I can't really say I feel sorry for him at this stage, because I just don't know. He might well be guilty, and he might well not be. But the next thing I want to lead on to is the nature of the trial. One thing I do think is entirely inappropriate, and it's rather sickening, is when you see him come out and you see groups of, I don't know if they're paparazzi or press in general, but shoving their cameras in his face, and regardless of the circumstances or the rights and wrongs, that's just the sort of gutter journalism that in my opinion has no place in the justice system, well, in any system. But my concern about this sort of trial is it becomes a media circus, and it does one or two things. Either it glorifies a guilty man, or it vilifies an innocent man. Either way is dangerous, because either way it will take away justice. And I know there's an argument it's in the public interest for a trial to be had, but South Africa is one of the world's most violent countries, and you certainly wouldn't get this sort of media circus over every murder that takes place in South Africa. So it's pretty obvious that the media attention is solely because of the people involved. And that's why I say it reminds me of the O.J. Simpson case. Again, in that case you had a sports star who was accused of murdering someone close to him. I just think that, there's a lot of things I don't like about British justice, but one thing I do like is the fact that we don't televise trials. Now, some people might say televised trials show accountability. I disagree. I think you can still have accountability without having a televised trial, because then you get into a situation like you have in the United States where it becomes almost like a soap opera, and it's even worse than the worst talk show, because you have a situation that people's emotional pain is being used as a sort of entertainment, like, oh, let's get the latest update, Pistorius breaks down, this sort of situation, and it's very crude. From a victim's perspective, sometimes you have a case where the accused wants a televised trial, or the victim's family wants a televised trial. Regardless, I think it's a rather sinister concept, and I think it's a mistake. So there isn't much more to say, really. I don't know what the outcome of this will be. I hope justice is done. If Mr. Pistorius is innocent, nothing will ever change the pain that he must have went through to lose a loved one, if that is indeed the case. Others are saying he killed her deliberately after an argument. We don't know. But whatever the case, there has to be justice. But this sort of media sensationalism around it, I can't see how that's in the public interest at all. It's clearly more for gossip magazines than it is for justice, and I think that's a problem.